What's good, everybody? Welcome to a video on the biochemistry of vitamin D. Before we get into the biochemistry, kind of the most important takeaways from this video is that everybody should be taking 2,000 IUs of vitamin D and 100 micrograms of vitamin K2. The reason for that is because 28% of US adults are deficient, 70% are deficient. The clinical symptoms are rickets in children. That's essentially like bones that are weak and brittle, cause problems growing properly, and then osteoporosis in adults. Oftentimes, I would say most people also have other symptoms such as depression or decreased testosterone, a variety of other things, but those are the ones that are just so obvious that you can't miss it. Now, vitamin D's primary function, and the reason that it's important essentially is because calcium is so important in your body. So it helps to maintain calcium homeostasis, which is used in muscle contraction and action potentials, which we've went over in other videos on this channel, as well as used in bone health, scaffolding of your whole body, being your skeletal structure, as well as immune system modulation, and as well as it directly increases your testosterone. So the way that vitamin D is able to exert its effects is primarily via this system that you can see on the right here. So calcitriol, or active vitamin D, will come in, it will bind to a vitamin D receptor that's already in the cytosol, or the nucleus of a cell. That vitamin D receptor will form a heterodimer, which just means a structure with two proteins, but it's hetero because they're two different proteins. So it's the vitamin D receptor and the retinoid X receptor. And then that complex will go and bind to the DNA. That DNA will transcribe some mRNA, and then that mRNA will go on to be translated into a protein, which exerts, the downstream effects. The primary protein that it expresses that helps vitamin D to increase calcium in your blood is by binding and increasing the expression of the TRPV6 calcium channel. So what you see on the right here, this is like an intestinal cell. Vitamin D will come and bind the vitamin D receptor and increase the expression of TRPV6. More calcium from the food and the things that you drink will go through that calcium channel. And then furthermore, it also increases the expression of calbindin. And calbindin just essentially binds calcium while it's in the intestinal cell, because certainly, calcium can come in and it can come out freely. But if it's bound to the calbindin, then, it'll come in and it'll be bound hopefully long enough to be able to be passed along and go into your bloodstream. It also acts on your kidneys directly. So once again, you'll have vitamin D that will come in, bind, and increase the expression of the TRPV5 protein this time, which will cause, your kidneys collect urine, and the urine will have some electrolytes in it, one of them being calcium. This protein will help to increase the amount of calcium that comes in through the kidney cell and then back out into your bloodstream here, reabsorbed. So it helps on both sides of the equation. The vitamin D will increase the uptake from the kidneys/urine of calcium, and then it will also increase the PMCA4 protein that you see here that will help calcium be uptook into your blood. The final way that it's able to increase your calcium is by directly releasing calcium from your bones. And so in this diagram, it's PTH. But vitamin D can essentially do the same thing. It will come, it'll bind to an osteoblast, it'll increase the expression of rank L proteins. That rank L will come bind the rank receptor on the osteoclast precursor, which will activate it into an active osteoclast, which is just a cell that breaks down your bone. So it releases calcium and phosphate into your blood. In contrast, an osteoblast is a cell which builds up your bones. And just an interesting side note is that if you notice, the osteoclast precursor is actually a macrophage, which is a white blood cell. So essentially a white blood cell becomes this cell that chops up your bones and releases calcium. Furthermore, even though it increases osteoclasts, which chop up bones, it also increases bone mineralization, meaning the formation of new bone. And it's able to accomplish this through increased expression of osteocalcin protein, collagen, as well as alkaline phosphatase. Before we talk about those specifics, though, you kind of just have to get a breakdown of what a bone is made of. And so a bone is primarily made of calcium, phosphate, and collagen. And then you have the diagram here, which kind of builds up from the smallest scale to the largest. So you have a collagen protein that's making its way along, makes up fibers, and then kind of in between that, you have what's called hydroxyapatite, which is just a phosphate and calcium unit. Just another kind of more specific breakdown of what the collagen looks like. So collagen is just repeats of glycine, hydroxyproline, and proline amino acid sequence built up into a helix and then into a fiber. And then that fiber combines with the hydroxyapatite crystals to form bones. And this is what a hydroxyapatite, kind of a singular unit, looks like. So you'll have, these are phosphate molecules, PO4, and then this is calcium. And you have the calcium positively charged because it's lost 2 electrons, which balances the 3 negative charges on the oxygens of the PO4 molecules. So now that you understand kind of the structure of bone, we can understand why alkaline phosphatase would be helpful to create that bone. So alkaline phosphatase is just an enzyme that turns pyrophosphate, so 2 phosphate molecules, into 1 phosphate molecule, so it splits them up. And pyrophosphate is primarily produced from ATP reactions, and obviously ATP is used in the electron transport chain, the primary mechanism by which the body produces energy. So there's certainly a lot of pyrophosphate floating around in your blood that can be utilized, turned into 2 phosphate molecules that can be utilized in, a hydroxyapatite to form bone. Vitamin D also increases osteocalcin, and osteocalcin is a protein that binds calcium in that hydroxyapatite molecule for use in bone mineralization. So this, you can see this is kind of a complicated diagram in general here. This essentially is an osteoblast on the left, this yellow here, and it will have some proteins that are coming out and connecting it to other cells. And then you have the blood vessel kind of rotating through here. And so osteocalcin molecules are released from the osteoblast, and they go in and they're able to bind calcium and kind of bring it back to be used to help build up new bone. And now we're getting to the portion of understanding where vitamin K fits into the equation. And so vitamin K actually helps to carboxylate some of the molecules come before the active form of osteocalcin so that it can be used properly. So as I said before, it not only carboxylates osteocalcin to activate it for use in bone formation, but more importantly, and why it's so imperative for people to take vitamin K with their vitamin D, is that vitamin K helps to prevent soft tissue calcification. And keeping in mind that the primary killer of people, especially in first world countries, is cardiovascular disease, which occurs because, you have damage to blood vessels, and essentially your body heals your blood vessels by bringing in calcium to help kind of harden plaques. And so if you have a lot of calcification of your blood vessels and your smooth muscles, that can ultimately lead to heart attacks or stroke. And vitamin K in particular prevents the soft tissue or your blood vessels from becoming overly calcified by activating this matrix GLA protein, MGP, and this acts as a chelator for calcium. So instead of osteocalcin, where osteocalcin acts to bind calcium that's in the blood and take it into an osteoblast, MGP will bind calcium that has found its way into a blood vessel and take it back out to the blood. So it's pretty amazing how vitamin K2 is able to have, different effects on different tissues. It's able to make sure that the calcification goes to your bones where you want it and not into your vessels where you don't want it. Additionally, vitamin D certainly has a powerful effect on your immune system. In particular, it increases the expression of the cathelicidin protein in macrophages and monocytes, which acts as antimicrobial. It downregulates inflammatory cytokines, and it upregulates anti-inflammatory cytokines. And last, it increases androgen receptor expression in your muscles. So essentially, if you have more androgen receptors, have more receptors available to bind testosterone and its various metabolites to be used not only in muscle building, but also different androgen effects. People are always talking about natural testosterone boosters, and certainly vitamin D is one of them. Hope this has been informative, and have a good rest of your day.